It's been a long time coming, but today we're going to do a Turbografx-CD test. We're going to start out with what is probably the worst game on the system, and then move on to what is easily the best game on the system. We'll start out with Addams Family.
It's not easy being you, Telly Alfred. Tully, my good man, how about playing a round of golf? Sorry, Gomez. Yikes! I'm a bit busy right now.
You know how most systems, even the bad systems, generally have at least one good launch title? This is certainly not one of those games. This is a pretty god-awful game, and it could definitely be more appreciated by somebody who grew up on these type of games to begin with. It is that bad. It definitely fits right into the caliber of angry video game nerd videos that he typically does. At least one good thing that Turbografx-CD games generally have in common is that they have exceptional sound effects and music, and part of that is due to the wave file format style that is much higher bit rate than, say, PCM, etc. that would typically be in a Super Nintendo game. A little side story. Years ago when I worked at Video Game Exchange, a guy brought in that entire box full of Turbografx-CD games, a Turbo Dual system, which is a combination of Turbografx-CD and the Turbografx-16, and it had a bunch of Who cards as well. And at the time, we didn't take that in. It was pretty much phased off of the market. I asked him what he wanted for it. He said he wanted like $80. I knew that there's at least something to it, so I ended up offering him $140 cash. Went home, and I had games like this, Godzilla, and I had several Who cards, which I've displayed in my previous videos. Anyways, I'm not going to torture you on this game anymore. I'm going to move on to the best game for the system, which is yet another CD-ROM that I ended up getting in that box, and it blew me away completely. I didn't really have the access to the internet because it was really, really new at the time. This was like 1994, pretty much when the internet first came out, at least for the general public. But this game here is one of the ones that happened to be in the box, and it just blew me away, and to this day it's still one of the best games on any system ever. And unfortunately they never truly released it, shamefully, on a system like PlayStation 1, but years later, like literally within the last decade, they released Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles on PSP, which not only had this game here as an unlockable, but it has a remake, which is really cool, and it also has an unlockable Symphony of the Night, which is like the PlayStation 1 version, but I believe it also has the Sega Saturn levels that were not in the PlayStation 1 version. And of course we got a Dracula X port on Super Nintendo, which is just bad. I mean, it's one of the priciest games to buy for Super Nintendo, but it's also a really crappy port. I mean, if you play it by itself, it's good, but it's like having vanilla. Once you have the chocolate version, which would be Dracula X Rondo of Blood on PCE-CD, Turbografx-CD, you just can't go back. And here we go, Turbografx-CD, Dracula X, Rondo of Blood, one of the top 100 games ever made, and we can now run it on our Mini NES. And it also has one of the best soundtracks in any game ever, too. I mean, not only one of the best games, but one of the best soundtracks. Everything about this game is just truly exceptional. And I'm not sure if any of you have watched that recent Castlevania anime. I mean, it was on Netflix. It was kind of short-lived because there were too few episodes, but I really enjoyed watching it. It really was a good combination of Vampire D type stuff. Now we get our introduction to the amazing soundtrack for the game. Now if you go playing the Super Nintendo version after playing this, you'll never want to go back to the Super Nintendo version again. I also played the version of Castlevania that was on PlayStation 3 and 360 a few years ago that was almost like an MMORPG, you know, action RPG to an extent where you could level up, get all kinds of upgrades and such. Look, it looks like we're in Castlevania 2 town here. Another cool thing is you could actually unlock characters like Maria in this. She flies doves around as an attack weapon. I mean, soundtrack aside, though, they should have definitely been able to do a better job of this game on the Super Nintendo. I don't know how they screwed it up so bad. And you may have noticed this is actually a full game with the entire OST intact. And there's a little bit of a catch to this. You're only going to be able to run a couple Turbografx-CD games at a time, unless I rip them down to the ISOs without the music. And it's quite a complicated process to rip them down to the ISOs. You can't just do the normal ripping process I do with other games. These have to be in a special format, a CHD format, and it's a lot trickier to work with. I mean, on the PC, Android, etc., you can run ISOs and you can run the Bin+Cues, but on the Mini NES, as of right now, we could only run CHDs. That's just how it is. And you're going to need the RetroArch installed. You'll need the Master BIOS module because I have the System Card 3 in it. And then, of course, you'll need the updated PCE Fast core that I updated. If you do not have these three things installed, you will not be able to play Turbo CD games.